Hey, welcome. This is the Smith Society Podcast, a podcast about storytellers and storytelling. I'm your host, Dwayne Fernandez, and I've got some ice stuck in my throat, so I have to go take care of that. On today's episode, we're going to feature the incomparable Lee Sung Jin. He is currently the creator, writer, showrunner, executive producer of Beef, a Netflix series starring Steven Yeun, Ali Wong, produced by A24. He has other television products in development with A24, FX, and Lionsgate. He has a lot of other projects in development on the feature side as well. He is the hardest working person I know. His past credits include FX's Dave, Amazon's Undone, Netflix's Tuca and Birdie, HBO's Silicon Valley, and FX's It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I remember hearing about Lee Sung Jin years ago. Everyone I knew was raving about how nice he was, his impeccable style, and really just how talented he was as an individual. I've been following his career for over 10 years, and when we were brainstorming people to feature on season 1, I knew this was my opportunity to ask him all those questions I've been dying to ask. But I knew getting him on the podcast was going to be a challenge. But against his better judgment and some debating, he said he'd do it, and I'm so grateful he did. So let's jump in. Oh, and one final note. This was recorded in fall of 2019. It was a much different time, although only a few years ago, but it's important to note because I think it helps frame some of the conversation. I hope you enjoy. All right, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. I would like for you to pronounce your name both ways.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
My Korean name, my given name is Lee Sung Jin. In Korean, you put the last name first. So that's why director Bong Joon-ho, Bong is his last name. I mean, my legal name is Sung Jin Lee, but I like to present it now as Lee Sung Jin because that's the Korean way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when did you decide that you wanted to focus on the Korean aspect? Or when you wanted to the traditional way?
Oh, yeah. I was born in Korea, and then I moved around a lot. I moved to the States when I was 9 months old, and then I moved back to Korea from 3rd through 5th grade. And when I came from Korea to Minnesota in 6th grade, I had gone through Sungjin. I had gone by Sungjin the whole time, and then in 6th grade, Minnesota, adolescence, the name got made fun of a lot, and the teacher would just mispronounce my name every attendance every day, Siang Kujin, throwing in consonants that weren't even there, and so I was so frustrated that one day I was just looking at my homework. And in the name section, I was like, you know what, Sunny. And I just wrote that for some reason, and it kind of stuck. And I went by Sunny forever since then, since 6th grade. And then I had no intention of ever changing it because everyone knows me as Sunny. I seem like a Sunny, I guess. But about a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, I was in Santa Monica. I used to live in Santa Monica, and there's this coffee shop, Dogtown Coffee. That's awesome. Shout out Dogtown. And they had called my order, and they read the name on my credit card. And these two grown white women laughed at my name being called because it's very foreign sounding. And I felt shame, and I grabbed my stuff and walked out really fast, and I didn't like how that felt, and I thought, I should try to change the stigma associated with Eastern sounding names. And so when I think about director Bong Joon-ho or Park Chan-wook, when I hear those names, they sound badass to me because they make really amazing content. And so I was like, if there's more Korean-sounding names that are associated with dope stuff, then it'll help change the stigma around that. And so I think the first time I started going by it professionally was on Tuca and Birdie. And that was the first time in credits that it appeared that way. And I really liked how that looked and felt. And so I kind of stuck with it.
Dude, I love that so much.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. People need to, the more people hear that, the more people understand like that there's different cultures and there's different sounds, and they're just normal and they're actually awesome.
Yeah.
And the people who are making this content, they're extraordinary people, and you should know the names and you should know these sounds.
Exactly. I mean, so when I was growing up, like I just felt so much like, I moved a lot in the Midwest, and I felt like a lot of shame about my Koreanness, and I think you like do so much to try and like distance yourself from it as a child and like be as white as possible. And, I feel like now things are changing in a great way, hopefully. And, for other Korean American kids out there, like it's just cool to like have more stuff that like looks and feels familiar, out in the open. And if more people could be doing stuff like that, then like, there's no way culture can't acknowledge that that's cool,
Absolutely. And and then they hear, a kid living in Omaha hears about this cool movie, goes to see it, hears this name, and it's like they don't even like, it just becomes part of their vernacular, or they're part of their reality, that these are names and they're normal, and they're I can't stop saying the word extraordinary because he's such a great director.
Yeah,
but like he's absolutely, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Well, that's cool. That's neat. When you were growing up, you said you're Minneapolis is where you spent. You moved from Seoul to Minneapolis?
I moved first. I moved to Urbana-Champaign because my dad was going to grad school there, and then we moved to Lafayette, Louisiana, and then Minneapolis, like downtown Minneapolis, and then Plymouth, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, and then Korea, and then let me try to remember, and then back to Wayzata, Minnesota, and then San Antonio, and then I went to college in Philly, and then my parents moved to Ames, Iowa, and then they moved to Naperville, Illinois, and I would go to like summer there during my college years, and then I moved to New York after college, and then LA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of all those places, is there one place in mind that you have fond memories?
No.
Yeah.
There's like pros and cons to everywhere, I think. I mean, yeah, I think I have 50-50 pros and cons of each place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely have probably like a fondness for Minnesota because like there was a lot, that was like my like junior high years, and you kind of form a lot of your opinions and tastes during that time. But I feel like I kind of like in hindsight really like that I moved around a lot, because it just like makes you aware of many different people, and forces you to kind of like adapt and be open, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it as a parent. I don't think in the present kids like doing that too much, but it was cool looking back.
There's one thing that I'm fascinated by Minneapolis, because like there was this, was it like early 2000s, there was this weird hip hop scene that came out of there, and like Atmosphere and ELP, and I'm like, what is happening in Minneapolis, where like there's this incredible sound of like white rappers and white producers that were doing like very emotional hip hop, like Atmosphere is like God Loves Ugly. It was like this really emotional journey, and like his girl broke his heart, so he wrote an album about it. I'm like, what's happening up there? So
yeah, no, Minneapolis has an incredible art scene. I mean, I wasn't too privy to it because I was pretty young, but I would always, like want to go to like, I think it's First Ave was like a venue there, and that whole like area, you like as a junior high school kid heard about how cool it was and how artistic it was. But all my friends actually in junior high in Minneapolis, I think they were like the most artsy friends I've ever had. It's like weirdly very like creative place. Yeah,
I think it's because all that, how cold it gets. Like you just you're in your house and you're like having to make stuff.
Very cold. Yeah.
The coldest I've ever been in my life was up there. It was like I was in college and I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and it was like -25. And I'm like, why do people live here?
Yeah, I remember one school morning. It was the wind chill was -70, and it broke a record. and I think we still had to go to school. I don't even know what that number means now. Like even like positive 70 now is cold to me, like negative 70, what? But yeah, it got very cold. And I think maybe that might be part of the reason. I mean, hardship does bring up good art.
Yeah. When you're traveling around the middle of the country, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Like, did you have one thing? Did you have many things that evolved? But what was going through your mind at that time?
I'm not sure. My parents are pretty traditional, and I didn't really think about. I feel like my mindset growing up wasn't like so much like what do I want to be or like dreaming of things. It was more like what am I supposed to do, and how high of an SAT score am I supposed to get? And it was very very rigid, and I felt like there were rules to life, and I had to do this to get to that. And so I wasn't sort of like dreaming as much as I was like, oh, there's a plan set out for me and I'm just supposed to do these steps and then everything will work out. Which, it did work out, but it definitely didn't work out the way anyone had planned. But yeah, I just I studied a lot and, did really well in my SATs. And
what is your number?
I think I got 1560. Yeah. My sister actually got a 1580.
Wow.
And so, I went to University of Pennsylvania, and I thought I was supposed to be an investment banker, and I majored in economics. I did really badly in it. Can't tell you anything about economics now, but it was a very different plan. But looking back, I would say that I always had a creative side, and that's what I probably was drawn to just as a human. I remember I did this thing, I think it was in sixth grade, called Odyssey of the Mind. I don't know if that's a state national thing, but it was this cool extracurricular group, and you were given prompts, and then you had to create anything from this prompt. It could be a sketch or a play or a musical, and then judges judged how creative it was, and then it there was a national tournament. And I remember I loved that so much, and I always did really well in writing courses and anything creative. I was very musical growing up. I played violin forever and guitar and piano and stuff, and so I definitely it was there. It just wasn't it was just supposed to be an extracurricular to put on your resume so that you got into a good school and not a profession. Yeah.
Do you still play stuff?
I do. I actually thought music was going to be my first thing. Out of college, I was in a band, and my first internship was at this independent music label off of Sony called Barsuk Records that Jack Ponte, who is the guitarist for Bon Jovi, and he wrote a bunch of songs. He had I reached out to him on this internet forum, and he gave me an internship.
I love it.
And I really thought music was going to be my thing, because it's probably my first love. But yeah, I thought that was going to be the route, but it didn't work out. I mean, so I still play for fun, but I don't think I could do it as a job.
It's a tough gig.
It is.
So you travel around, you pursue this major in economics at Penn, and here you are, and you're a writer. So take me through the journey of how you go from being at Penn as a economics major to being a creative writer.
Yeah, it was mostly just being poor. I graduated, and then I didn't really know what I was doing, and I moved to New York with no real plan. I actually remember I packed my Honda CR-V with packed all my stuff. It was winter time because I had like stayed in Philly after I graduated, just like, I think I was like helping out with a church or something. And I packed all my stuff and I was planning to move to New York, and I stayed over at a friend's place. And in the morning when I was walking out to my car, I saw some like of my like ties strewn about in the snow. And I was like, oh no. And then I looked at my car and the back window had been smashed and they stole like literally everything I owned. You know, I had covered my stuff with a blanket thinking that would do the trick, you know, that people were dumb enough to be like, oh, that blanket must not be hiding anything. So they stole all my stuff. I actually had like a bag of important documents, and it had like my every passport, diploma, everything in there. I still don't have a diploma, and the only thing they left were a couple CDs, which is very insulting. You know, not only will we steal from you, but like your taste is not great. And so we'll leave this Aladdin soundtrack right here and take everything else. And that was like my first move and to like start my adult life. And my friends at the time, they were so kind, and they pulled together a bunch of money and gave me like a couple $100 to move to New York. And shout out to Jason Min and David Kim, who coordinated that. And I moved to New York, and I was really depressed and really poor for a very long time. I just found roommates via Craigslist, which is not a great way to find roommates. And I moved around so much in New York because I couldn't afford any place for very long. And I remember I lived in Greenpoint, but this is before it was cool, and I just never left my room. I watched the OC nonstop. That's all I remember. That's actually when I started blogging. This was early blogger days, so it must be 2003 or 4. And I blogged a lot about the OC. That's all I blogged about.
Please tell me the records of this exist still.
I actually deleted the blog, but it got really popular. It was called Silly Pipe Dreams, and actually it was the one thing I enjoyed doing, and so I did that a lot, and I just created this weird following because I would post about music that was on television before anyone was really doing that. And Josh Schwartz actually found my blog, and I started having some communication with him via that, and yeah, it got pretty big. And then but I was doing that and just trying to find a job, and then a friend of mine got me in for an interview at the NBC Page program, at 30 Rockefeller. It's literally Kenneth the Page with the blue blazer and stuff. You're making $10 an hour, giving studio tours and stuff. And so I got in. And that was great. It was a lot of fun. Met some really good friends there, and I got a job at the Today Show, which I hated because my hours were 1 p.m. to 4 a.m., which is the opposite of humans. It just my depression got worse, and I had met a friend through the program, this guy Pat Walsh, and both of us were interested in writing, and we decided to try writing together. We don't write together anymore, but we kind of started our careers together, and we wrote this pilot about the Page program, and it somehow got into the right hands, and we were fielding offers from agents, and we flew out to LA to meet with all the different agents, and that kind of started things, I guess. Yeah.
How long were you a Page?
I wasn't a Page for the full year. It's a year program. I think I was maybe 6 months or so.
So creative writing wise, the OC hooks you into telling a story. Is that kind of the first time that you're actually putting yourself out there into writing, in creative writing? Is that Had you done stuff prior?
No, I mean, yeah, blogging was like my first. I had a Zanga back then, pre-blogger. It was like the worst Zanga imaginable. It was just like me trying to like break into parties I found in New York. I would sometimes I would like research what premieres were happening and then get dressed up in a suit and go by myself and then like somehow sneak into these parties and just be there alone. And I would like sit by like where the hors d'oeuvres were coming out, and that would be like my dinner for the day. And then I would like try to network or something. And yeah, those were dark times. But I was like, my Zanga was like just updates about those nights. And then, and thank God it's no longer available. But blogging was like my first, and I wouldn't call my blogging like creative writing at all. It was just like fanboying more so. But yeah, I didn't really, my first time really writing anything creative. I mean, I wrote stuff like for school and growing up, but like, you know, the first time was with Pat, just kind of just watching a lot of television and reading a lot of books. And that became my new obsession, you know, like since I'm not a very like, I like to stay in. And so, you know, I just like spent hours watching stuff, trying to just become obsessed with it and put in my 10,000 hours, you know? And, yeah. And I feel like, as long as like you're passionate and obsessive about something, you can pick it up pretty quick. Anything, I think.
Well, the formula's out there, right? You can watch a great show, you can break it down, you can, you know, start understanding acts, and you can start really creating a beat sheet.
Yeah.
And seeing like, oh, there's kind of I won't say a formula here, but there's something here that works. And maybe I can use my own creativity to come up with my own thing that works. And maybe I can innovate.
I think that's exactly right. And I think for myself, it's easy, and for a lot of people, it's easy to just get stuck in that first phase, which is mimicking others. And I think, I mean, in general, just in being a human, that's what we're doing most of the time. You know, you're born into this world, and you as a child are mimicking behaviors and tastes and things and learning how to be. And I think with writing, it's the same thing, where at first you're looking at other things that were supposedly good and trying to break it down and copy that. Not like copy and paste that, but just like absorb that. And I think for a majority of writers, and definitely for myself, you kind of get stuck and think like that's what writing is. But like you said, there's this next phase that hopefully one can get to, where you learn that exists, and then realize, oh, that's just what other people do. Doesn't mean I have to do that. How do I want to approach this? What are the rules I want to make? And then you learn to kind of define your own type of storytelling and your own voice. And I think that comes hand in hand with also you as a human learning to kind of filter out the stuff that you've absorbed from other people, and trying to figure out who you really are and who your true self is. Which I kind of had to do in order to get to, like, I feel like my career sort of has two phases. And that first phase, even though I did have success with it, it was me mimicking others and just trying to fit in and do stuff that I thought people would like. And then, and I found that me as a human, I was doing that as well. You know, you come to LA and you think you're just trying to fit in with the crowd, I guess, or at least I was. And you know, I would go to like general meetings, and people would be like, with executives, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's your favorite comedy of all time?" And I would say Caddyshack, because that's what everyone said, but I don't like Caddyshack, you know? And I would just say that because I thought that's what you're supposed to say. And so like the first phase of my career, I definitely think I was unhappy because I was not being true to myself in my writing, nor as a human being in just like life. And it took sort of a big kind of breakdown / breakthrough in order for me to realize like I don't have to do that, and I can start trying to get to know who I really am. And then my writing, I think, has slowly started to reflect that more, and it's kind of taken me a different direction, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And I think that there's an evolution there, and I think that what you discover, to your point, is like you're trying to understand how, I mean, I think by the very nature of the studios and the networks kind of impose the will of like mimicking, and, you know, like they want that. They want the next, by them saying, we want the next Seinfeld. Like they're looking for material that kind of represents something that was successful in the past.
Yes.
And so with that, as you're coming here as a young creative person, you're like, okay, that's what they want. So I'm going to go and look and start mimicking. To your point, it's one, it's human nature. Two, it's then the system is actually telling you that's what they want. And then, so like an innovative idea is risky idea. So if this idea doesn't comp against something, then it's super risky. And like, you really have to find someone that can really be a champion of that and sell it through. But I think your path, what it has shown is like, you can be very successful by fitting in within the system, being very good at that, finding your voice along the way, and then discovering, how do I make my voice, and how do I take that story, take my story, my truth, my vulnerabilities, and apply them in a way that now that you know how the system works.
Yeah, for sure. I think because ultimately, I think people, whether they know it or not, are probably like seeking authenticity, you know, and truth. And it's not even just the studio systems that are sort of enforcing this. It's just like society in general, you know, like the status quo, like just so much of our lives are people telling you like, oh, like be normal, or this is the way, or like why, like, you know, there's a very like hive mind sort of nature to us. And so you're constantly sort of feeling like you have to like contort yourself to fit in this predetermined shape as a just being. And I think that's like, you know, manifests in like the studio system, but also just like with like people. And like, you know, I think you're like looking back, life has just been like a long journey of like filtering out people who like are trying to like fit you into this thing, and finding people that allow you to not only just be, but like be the purest form of yourself. And yeah, so you know, it is tough. Like it's just like a constant battle for me anyway, to kind of give me the space to do that. And that's, I think, why I don't really like go out that much. I'm a very I'm a hermit, and I don't like, I used to go out a lot, but like now I like really, I think it's tough, like, because when you go out and you surround yourself with, when you put yourself into certain environments, you can't help but absorb that energy, you know? And then you take that back with you. And so I try to like kind of shield myself from that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think that you're, you know, to a comment you said earlier, we're learning these things from society that are like, there's something wrong with being a loner. There's something wrong with being a hermit. I'm not even saying that those are the same things, but like we have all these preconceived notions through society that no, you've got to be outgoing. You've got to be, we love charming people. We want people who can hold a room and hold court. And those are valuable people to us as a society. And we're starting to realize like, actually the people who are like introverts and very quiet are actually innovating society through technology, through stories. And like, it's because they want to be alone and they just want to work on their craft. And please let me do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very valuable, because that's the only way you can really give yourself the space to get to know yourself. And I think that's sort of the troubling thing about the times that we're in with like social media and like Instagram and Twitter and stuff. It's like designed for, you know, very outgoing, sort of external facing personalities. And even like, I find that there's like a trend in terms of like sort of like writing and just in the industry that like they reward more people who are very outgoing, thus have more followers, and like, but like, you know, traditionally a lot of writers are very not good at that, and a lot of personalities don't enjoy that. And it's tough to maintain that when the system, especially online, that we've created, doesn't really like, give shine to that kind of personality. But yeah, I think it's really important to give yourself space for that, because that's the only way you can like really hear your own voice, because it's pretty loud otherwise.
Well, yeah, and on top of that, when you're actually going out and doing all these events, you're going to your agent saying, you need to go network at this event when you're early in your career. We want you to go and take these meetings. And you're like, I have no time to actually write. Like, yes, when do I write? When do I actually get to sit down and be quiet with my thoughts and come up with ideas if I'm constantly running around?
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, writing is mostly, it's like 90% just like doing nothing, like it's like hard enough to write without stuff going on, because like I'll spend like a week at home, and like 6 out of the 7 days is just like mostly me like moving from spot to spot, like, oh, I'll sit here for a little bit, and that's not working, and I get nothing done, but it's just like meandering around the house. But that does like set the stage to then like on the 7th day, hopefully you channel something and something comes out, Mm-hmm. But it's a very fragile process for me. I know writers who can pump stuff out. I certainly can't. But yeah, for me, it's a very fragile process where like, 6 days of solitude, and I'm like hoping that something will spark, and then like something will interrupt me, and then I have to start over and then do another 6 days of just sitting around. So yeah, it's hard to write and also be social for me, but everyone's different, and I know there's plenty of people who can do it too. I just I'm envious because I don't know how.
Well, there's different phases. Like, I think that while you're moving around, there's all these things going on in your brain. They're actually trying to figure out that all the little steps, connect all the dots, figure out the structure, figure out a character. What's this character? And like, even though you're not writing, this stuff's happening in your brain. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where like the magic happens, right? There's always little like these little, mm-hmm. like if you were to have connected to biometrics, you'd see all this little magical light happening in your brain, even though you're just moving around from your spot.
Oh yeah,
to spot.
Totally. I mean, most of the stuff I'm working on now, I've been like kind of sitting with it for years, yeah, it's like most of the subconscious work it's like done over a really long period of time, just daily, just interacting with your environment and thinking about stuff. It's very little like actual writing.
When you're able to create a home, when you get to a certain point where you can actually create an environment that is actually elevates your subconscious, you have beautiful things around you that inspire you, you have quiet, you're able to like create this world, it's almost like a garden. You've like created a soil that's rich, and like as you plant seeds, they grow faster, and you're like, well, I've spent all this time, I've worked towards creating this home, why would I want to leave it? Are you a early riser or a night owl?
I'm definitely a night owl, although lately I've been waking up earlier, but yeah, I find that weirdly, like the 3 to 4 a.m. time is probably like when the best writing comes out, unfortunately.
And do you know through your creative process now that like, I'm going to need these nights where I'm up till like 4 a.m. trying to break through here? Or is it something that is common in your pattern now that some nights you're just throughout the week, I'll be up till 4 or 5?
I definitely am trying like not to do that, just because it's like I'm getting older and I can't. But it just kind of shakes out that way. I've been trying really hard to just have more of like a regimented schedule of writing, but yeah, it's tough because I just think that for me is the magic hour, because most of the world is asleep, so it's very quiet. And I know there's just like less clutter to have to get through to like tap into the source, And so I just find it easier. Like stuff flows better at that hour, even though I'm very tired. And maybe it is because I'm tired, because then you're like not overthinking things, and you can just kind of be in the flow. But yeah, it's very, there's definitely a drastic difference between how much gets out between 3 and 4 and all the other hours.
Do you collect anything?
I do. I collect vinyls, a lot of first pressings, and I also collect a lot of old books. I like there's this bookstore in Santa Monica, Angel Bookstore, and the owner is awesome. He's a really cool guy, and he has a lot of stuff. I also go to Bart's Books in Ojai a lot. They have a lot of cool stuff. But yeah, I just love collecting like old things. I don't know, there's something about like the history of it that feels nice.
Do you think when you see a book, is it, obviously there's a handful of like bucket list books that must be in the collection, but when you're at these bookstores, or is it like the visual element that will pop out, or sometimes it's a story you might read? What are you drawn to?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like the standard ones. Like I have like a really early To Kill a Mockingbird, I think a first pressing, and like the first paperback of Catcher in the Rye, and things like that, you know. But then I have like just like, I really like 60s culture, and especially like a lot of metaphysical stuff and psychedelic stuff. And so like there's this one, I have like a first edition of the psychedelic Tibetan Book of the Dead that like Timothy Leary and a bunch of other people, I think from Harvard, wrote. That's like really cool. I have like a lot of like Huxley. I have like a first pressing of like Ram Dass, Be Here Now, like things like that. Just like stuff that I don't know. I feel like that I definitely like relate to that time, I think, on a probably like spiritual level, and so I try to collect stuff around that. But yeah, it's fun. And there's something about like the texture of it, like in your hands, that's really cool.
Well, this day and age of everything being digital, it's so nice to have something that's you can hold and touch and feel. Because even, you know, while you're working, I don't. Do you work on a typewriter?
No.
So yeah, you're working on a laptop where you're creating something that's so beautiful and important, but like it's in a digital form. So going out and actually getting something that you can hold and help inspire you there's something beautiful about that. Yeah,
it's like I definitely like have a hard time reading lately, like more and more. So it sort of forces me to like retain that skill somewhat. It's very hard to read these days. That's not on a screen. Like my brain can't process words on paper anymore. But so like it definitely like forces that muscle to work a little bit. But yeah, I don't think I've like finished like a actual like, I just like collect them, and then like I but I read them on like my phone or iPad.
I try to go to Barnes & Noble once a month, and I'm like picking up books, and I'm like, oh, David Sedaris short stories on my nightstand, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's 8 that I haven't even cracked open yet.
Oh yeah, sure. They're much more decorative than anything now.
There's intentions. I do want to read them. Random question. What do you think of robots?
I think they can be cool. I think it's exciting, but I think like you mean like robots like AI, or like robots like robotics, like
any of them?
I think they could all, like, I think it's like any tool where it can be great or bad, you know, like fire. Today there's these really bad fires out in Granada Hills, and that's bad, but fire is also great sometimes. And I think AI and robots will be very similar, and it depends on the user, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with, are you familiar with Giant Robot, the art store in Sawtell? So
yeah, it's great.
Talking to Eric Nakamura, and I asked him this question 12 years ago, and he said something I never thought about. And he was talking about how in Japan, he's like, if you culturally look at American robots and Japanese robots in story, Japanese robots, or robots that came out of that part of Asia, are operated by human beings. Robots in America in sci-fi are AI robots. They have their own personality. And I just chew on this for all these years to just think about like, how does that represent us as a culture? Like, what does that mean? And it's a really interesting point that he had.
That is weird. But not surprising.
What's the craziest thing you've ever done?
I guess I don't know. What do you mean by crazy?
Looking back on it, I don't think it's something you regret. It's just something that, like, man, I can't believe it. That it could have been like you reaching out to somebody in your career to pursue it, and you're like, I have no reason I should be doing this. Or it's something you did a trip that was like, well, that was insane. I shouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. Or when you're in high school, or something even in college. Maybe moving to New York was the craziest thing you've ever done.
Yeah, I feel like every decision or action is pretty crazy, you know. Like life in general is weird, how it all kind of adds up to this present moment. But I don't know. I'd say, yeah, definitely moving to New York was a big step, and I think I'm trying to think what else. I mean, I definitely, like, in those early years had no shame of like reaching out to people to, you know, show my work. And I definitely like wrote a lot of emails to a lot of important people that I don't think I would do now. Like, it's actually kind of embarrassing thinking back on it. Like, I would tell old me to just like dial it down a little. But yeah, I can't believe like I did that with like really no awareness or shame. And but it sometimes it worked, and sometimes I'm sure it really didn't work. But yeah, that was pretty. I don't know where that came from.
Well, it's kind of interesting though, because there's something about having the ability to put yourself out there and also be okay with. Maybe you weren't okay with rejection at that time, if someone ignored you or whatever it was, but like it maybe built up your confidence in a weird way.
Yeah, so like, I think like I don't know. I just like knew this is what I was supposed to be doing, and I just like I don't know. It was weird. I like with anything else, I wouldn't have done that. You know, like for music, I wouldn't do that. You know, I wouldn't like reach out to a bunch of people to like listen to my music. But for some reason with writing, I just like, and you know, I think it helped like having a writing partner, because then it's not like, you know, you're like doing that for two people, you know, so it feels like less weird. But yeah, I just like, I don't know, I had like this innate sense that like it was going to work out, and I just needed to like keep pressing. And I think you hear that a lot with like people who are happy with what they're, or feel like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in like in terms of work, that they always kind of like knew, you know, deep down that that's where they would end up. And I think subconsciously something about it just kept me like pushing in a way that I wouldn't for anything else.
Do you remember the moment that you were like, oh, this is it, I get it now, and I want to do this forever, and I can do it forever?
I think, yeah, I think it was like those early days when I was writing that first pilot with my then writing partner. You know, I just found that I could do that and think about that for long periods of time. You know, I could stay up really late only thinking about that, and I was like, oh, I like, you know, there's not a lot of things you can do that with, and so there's a certain fulfillment when you can focus on one thing for a really long time. And so I feel like that's probably when like I was like something kicked into high gear, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When
you started writing the pilot, had you read a screenplay prior to that? Did you understand like even just the format of how a screenplay worked?
Yeah, I just like, I read a lot of blogs. I know you had mentioned John August earlier when we were talking, and I read his blog a lot. There's this guy, Ken Levine, I think his name is, that I read his blog all the time, and you know, ordered some books. Although back then I don't think I ordered. I like went in person and bought books. And I just like became a real student. But I think like but now I feel like I could probably do that obsessive focus on like I find that I like doing that with other things now too, like design or architecture or things like that. Like I feel like I could like I think screenwriting was like the first thing that like gave me that fulfillment, but I could easily see myself, if everything went to shit, that I would find something new to obsess over.
Well, I think that when you understand story, you can apply that to an experience in a museum. You can apply that to a building. You can understand what an audience is trying to, and I've had conversations with architects, like their favorite thing to do when a building is done is to go sit in the lobby and watch people walk through a building and see how they're experiencing the space. And if, are they looking at things I want them to look at? And are they how are they moving like a water through this space? And I think that there's a story, and everyone wants to tell that story. And I think whether you're an architect and you break that, and you understand how to tell that story, you can apply that in other places either as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think writing helps you deconstruct things, and there's really only like two things that anything does, which is like rise or fall. And once you know that, then you can like apply that to really anything. There's actually this machine learning algorithm that I forget at what university they fed like thousands of pieces of classic literature into this machine learning and algorithm, and it found that there's only 6 ways humans tell stories, and it's all like different versions of rise or fall. It's like rise, fall, or like fall, rise, fall, rise, or fall, rise, fall. And and that makes sense. It's like really, and I think music is the same way. There's like a status quo chord, and then you either rise or fall from it, and then you resolve. And literally everything kind of falls into that. And Kurt Vonnegut actually knew that before. And there's this YouTube lecture of him like graphing rises and falls. And, he famously, I think, coined the term man in the hole arc, which is like, I think a fall rise. And I think that has helped me a lot just in approaching like anything, whether it's like, music or narrative, any sort of narrative, to know that like we're ultimately only, those are like, it's very generic and broad, but like that really is what it boils down to.
So it's a great way to segue into this question. You get an assignment, you're coming up with an idea, you get a project, you've been working on a treatment, you've been working on a synopsis, and you get it, you start moving forward with the project. You've got 3 weeks, you got a deadline, I don't know however long it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is. How do you go from A to B? How do you approach it from like, you seem like you're very methodical, and also like you allow yourself to be creative, but like how do you, now with your experience, how do you look at that period of time? And how do you get through it? Weirdly,
I think each thing has a life of its own, and you just try to like go with the flow of it. And you just approach it differently, Some days I'll like try a different way in or rethink something. Other days I'll like watch a bunch of stuff and see if it inspires something. But yeah, every project, it's like a very different process.
So sometimes you might, do you sit there and like, okay, I'm going to outline this season. Like, nope, I'm just going to work on the first 10 pages, or I'm going to build out a character. I'm going to, write a Bible. I'm going to, do you do any of those things now?
Well, a lot of it is, a lot of the steps kind of, are intrinsically there because of the selling process, like for my pilots, at first you kind of get like a kernel of some sort of inspiration, and then you kind of flesh it out, and then hopefully find producers that want to do that with you, and then you go pitch it. And when I pitch, my pitches are very, very intense. Like I do like this crazy PowerPoint presentation, and usually like Photoshop and storyboard each scene that I'm talking about. And it takes forever for me to finish these presentations. And so a lot of that has when you're doing that, you've done a lot of the groundwork, and you're setting up like the general arcs and where different seasons and characters and things. So a lot of that's done when you're pitching it, and then hopefully someone buys it, and then when they buy it, they have their input, and so then you have to go back and revisit and tweak, and then naturally once you sell it, there's like steps, and so you turn in an outline, and then you get notes on the outline, and you go to your first draft, and then you get notes on that. So that kind of like gives it some structure. But each of those steps kind of has its life of their own, I think.
Yeah, I can totally see that. That's neat. I love the fact that you're a writer, but you also spend all this time actually creating the visual elements to sell through your idea.
Yeah, because I think I'm more of a visual person. I'm actually not a very good writer. It's very, very hard for me. And so a lot of times when I get stuck, what's helped a lot actually, and this is a unsolicited promotion, is the iPad Pro with the pencil. Like, I didn't think I'd like it so much, but with the pencil, I can like go and draw each scene that is in my head. And so I will like draw each and storyboard certain areas, like a cold open, and I'll just kind of like close my eyes and try to imagine it and then draw it. And then that actually helps give it some form. And then I can take that and then create some beats out of it. And then hopefully that turns into something. But the visual element for me is very, very important, because I think my head goes there first.
That's amazing. If you the fact that you said that you don't think you're a strong writer, do you beat yourself up at times about it, or do you like well, this isn't my strength, so I'll power through?
Yeah, there's definitely I think like a lot of writers go through similar phases of writing where like at first you're like, I can do this will be good, I'm excited to start this project, and then like and you're like, I'm pretty great, and then you like start and you're like, oh no, I'm not good at all. And then you like finish something and then you're like, I'm the best writer of all time and this is going to change the world. And then you reread it and then you're like, oh boy, that's really bad. And so you go through these phases of thinking you're the best, but then also the worst. And that's just kind of life,
That's absolutely life. Do you, through your creative process, through the stuff that we've been talking about, your creative phase, are you ever bringing in people for insight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the time. I mean, that's like fairly, I started doing that like probably like when my career phase changed. Like my first phase was that phase I was talking about, that was with a writing partner. And then phase 2 was solo. And as I like kind of rediscovered myself, I think in that second phase, I started to bring in more people people that I trust and I don't feel judged by, to like, pretty early on constantly be like getting feedback. 'Cause I think it's, no idea is precious. We're all like the same thing really expressing itself. And so, it's just nice to have, to just like constantly be getting feedback and making it better, I think.
Earlier in your career, people are a little more precious about their ideas,
right?
Because they think they have like this thing that no one else has thought of, and
yes.
They don't want anyone giving feedback on it.
Yeah, and I think, and I definitely used to be that way, and it makes me cringe. And I can still be that way sometimes, but I think now I'm more aware that like, that we're pretty much the same. We're just like the universe experiencing itself. So whether I come up with something or someone else does, it really doesn't matter. All these narratives, I think, are trying to be a mirror of helping us evolve. And so like, yeah, and now I'm like more like, oh, just whatever helps. Like it's more about being a vessel for I guess, authentic moments, and then being possessive about any idea, which is why it's so funny to me when like, you know, a lot of times like this happens a lot culturally where similar ideas tend to pop up at the same time. I think it's called like multiple discovery theory or something like that. I don't know, but it's kind of like how the telephone was invented by not only Alexander Graham Bell, but this other woman on the same day, like thousands of miles apart. And I think it's penicillin or some antibiotic too that one person's given credit for, but it actually popped up in several places in history around the same time. And I think idea-wise, creatively, that happens a lot too, because you know, like obviously, like right now, there's a lot of like alternate reality stuff, and you know, sometimes parts of people are like, oh, that person ripped off that person, or like, or, you know, but it's really what's going on. I think is that we're all like, you know, people that are experiencing very similar environmental factors, and so when you have those inputs, that naturally the output, the Venn diagram can be fairly large. And so that's why you have these like weird instances of very, very similar things popping up. And so I think it's just like, so you can't be precious about it, you know, because you're really just like, it's just like we're all things just responding to external stimuli, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what's interesting is that if you go into a room and you say you're really precious about this one idea, you're almost saying like, this is the one I got. I don't have many more. Sure. So like, you better like this one. And I had a mentor right. early on say like, you know, if they don't like the one other idea, let them like, well, I got 100,000 more I can come up with. Mm-hmm. But to your point, you also realize that there's elements of a story that you have to fight for, that you're like, no, this is really important to the story. As a writer, you know that there are certain things that are important for the arc, and then but you have to receive feedback and navigate that, and then you it's almost a little bit of politics through business. You have to know how to navigate those waters carefully.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a learning curve to that for sure.
Of all the characters you've had the privilege to write for, who's one of your favorite?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's fine. That's fine.
I don't know if, I don't think they've announced the season of this show that I had written for recently, but that was really fun to write for.
In the future, we'll come back to that one.
Yeah.
As it relates to characters that you've created, do you think you want to talk about, do you have one for that, or is that also in the future?
I try to only write stuff now that I actually, care a lot about. You know, I think before, again, first phase, I was selling a lot of stuff just to sell it and to please others, and to try to figure out what the other wanted. And so now I try to like write stuff that I like and that I find interesting. And so each project now, for the most part, you know, they're each character is very fulfilling in different ways. Yeah.
That's amazing. What do you love about your job?
You know, I love just that it allows ways to like express things in my head. You know, it's like a nice outlet, and I do like the collaborative aspect of it. It's like a nice balance for me of like being able to be a hermit and like I'm like being in my cave and like just create, but then at times allow myself to collaborate with people I really love and enjoy, especially lately. I think like you naturally, the more you filter out stuff that isn't you, and you're truer to yourself, you naturally draw people that are in line with you. And that's been happening a lot more in recent years, and so you get to meet a lot of really cool people that you vibe with, and so that's been really great. You know, like I just been really fortunate getting to collaborate with some amazing humans.
That's cool. The law of attraction, right? You starts coming together.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Do you think that there is something that makes a script great? Like as you're reading, even something that you're not, like, what do you think makes?
I think just for me, I spark to things that feel very true and real, I guess. I think anything that feels contrived is the stuff that like hurts it. And so, yeah, I think the stuff that makes a script good is just like whatever feels authentic.
What personality trait do you think is most important to a writer?
I don't know that there is one, you know. It's like, yeah, I think I don't think there is one. I think like you just gotta be you, and then yeah, I know I keep saying the same thing, but I think
that's a hard thing to do for a lot of people, especially when you're young, you know, to all the things that we've talked about with like what society makes us think we are. You actually have to remove all that stuff and then find you, and be okay with you. So that's actually quite complex.
It is. Yeah. It's very like, it's much harder to do. Yeah. It's less of a trait and probably more of the journey that I think is important, but not only for writing, but for anything, like is just trying to like strip away stuff and figure out who it is that you are and what you're trying to say, and the more you can do that, I think the better your writing will be.
You said something earlier that I keep thinking about, and I was like, well, I'll follow up with that. And I'm like, no, actually, no, we've gone on, but I have to go back to it. It's like a dog with a bone. You talked about your pitches, right? So you said that you have this very intricate pitch process. Do you enjoy the pitch phase?
I do. I love pitching. I weirdly love it. I'm like, I would rather do that than write, honestly. If I could just like pitch for a living, like create PowerPoints for a living, I'd be very happy.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
So you roll up to a studio, you've got this big presentation, there's a lot of partners, and you're like, give me the ball. Like, I want this.
Oh, well, you go over it with your partners beforehand, right. So they're very aware of what I'm about to unleash on these buyers. I bring my laptop, and I have like a, you know, like usually like a 35 to 40 slide presentation with like very interactive, like multimedia music and like trigger points and things like that. And it's funny now, like I think like the word's kind of gotten out, and so like I think like I've definitely gotten some people like, I have heard about your PowerPoints, we're excited, and so I gotta like tone it down a little, but
well, weirdly, like it's the most important part of the project is nailing that, right? And that's why I think to some people it's nerve-wracking. It's so terrifying. They're shaking before they go on those meetings. They hate presenting. They might be the most outgoing people of all time, but it's tough. It's a tough audience sometimes.
Oh yeah, it can be the worst. But I've like a weirdly now I've like, I don't get nervous at all, and I just sort of like, it's so like presentational, and like it almost just feels like you're like performing, or like it's like performance art or something. And so I like just kind of block out the people that are there, and I just like focus on, and my pitches are so like meticulously planned that most of the time my brain is just like remembering, and like so I don't have time to like really think about anything else.
That's smart.
Yeah,
and you're also like, and you're giving them an experience versus like a presentation. It's like they're going into LACMA and they're saying something. And I think about it, I have a feeling in the Smithsonian at one point there's gonna be an exhibit of Sony's presentations. What advice do you have for somebody who's coming out of college, comes out of any college in America, around the world, and they want to be a writer in Los Angeles? What's the single advice you would give them?
I'd say, apart from what we've already talked about in terms of like, you know, giving yourself the space to get to know yourself, I'd say like just put in the hours. You know, I think a lot of people get caught up in the other stuff that they can't control, like you know, like who do I network with, or like how do I get an agent, and and so much of that is luck anyway, that really the only thing you can control is your content. And I just like put in the hours, rewrite, try new things, constantly be doing only that, because I think if your stuff is good, it'll naturally like open doors for you. And so many times, and even for myself, like when I look back at my early stuff, I would never send it out now, but at the time I was like, oh, this is awesome. And but it wasn't, and I could have stood to probably improve a lot of that. And the more you can make your stuff great, just like the wider the doors will open. And I think too many times people blame it on other factors, like, oh, I don't know the right people, or I'm just unlucky, or like I need to be a writer's assistant on this show or that show. And yeah, those help, and those are factors. But like, if you suddenly wrote Eternal Sunshine, like people will pay attention, it's like hard to ignore greatness. And so just put in the hours to try to be great.
I love that. As far as your current projects, we've talked a little bit about them, and then out there in the universe, Tuca and Birdie's out there. Mm-hmm. And what was that? How was it like working on that?
Oh, I love that show, and I loved working for it. Lisa Hanel-Walt is the absolute best. She says it was her first time showrunning, but it didn't feel that way. She knew exactly what she was doing. She had a very clear vision, super collaborative, no ego. Creates a really safe environment to create. I loved working for her. I find that in general, Raphael Bob Blacksburg's shows all have environments that are very, very fondly talked about. Like, I have a lot of friends on BoJack, and they just love writing for that show. I think he just has like a really good knack for like good humans. He has a good radar for that, and I think that's very, very important for a writing environment. Like maybe even more important than like finding the best talent necessarily, because talent's so subjective anyway. That finding really good humans is super key, and they do a great job of that. And all the writers on Tuca and Birdie were like incredible people. It was super fun because, we were starting from scratch. I mean, like not scratch. Lisa had so many ideas already, but it was like a new show, which was always fun to think about. And Tiffany and Ali are such great voices, and Stephen Yeun, John Early. I mean, just had like a banger cast. And so, yeah, it was super fun.
As it relates to what you wanted audience to feel at the end of season 1, what did you want them to feel?
I mean, I think we wanted them to feel like a really strong friendship between these two bird women, a friendship that felt very relatable and true, even though they're birds. And I think we accomplished that.
You nailed it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
We only have like 3 more questions left.
Oh, yeah, sure. And I don't mind. We don't have to like stick to the questions either.
Yeah. No, there's a couple I really am curious about. How do you define success?
I don't know. I mean, I guess probably with like other words, like there's financial success, which is like easily to measure because you just look at your bank account. And I guess there's like personal success, which is like how fulfilled and content you are overall. And then I guess there's like critical success, which is like how well received you are by your peers. And they're all different. And I don't judge one over the other, I guess, but they're all different. And it's tough to gauge. Success is a weird thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe in magic?
I guess it depends on. Sorry, I have a hard time like defining
Of course.
things. Yeah, I guess it depends on what you mean by magic.
Maybe you run into somebody and it was meant to be. Do you believe in that the universe provided this interaction?
Yeah, I definitely go back and forth on that. I think magic can be as real as your perception wants it to be. And if you really believe in magic, then of course it is real. But if you don't, then it's not. And so I think it depends on your own perception. For me, I definitely waffle back and forth with all that like synchronicity stuff. And but there's definitely like things that have happened that are so strange and so weird that it's very hard to deny at this point. Yeah, but I go through phases where I'm like a super skeptic, and then stuff happens and I'm like, that's very hard to ignore. Yeah, I'm probably lean more into the believer side right now,
Right.
presently.
How do you think we can make the world a better place?
One, by being true to yourself and trying to like hear your own voice, like the highest version of your own voice. And then I think also like, I think there's like this Gandhi quote that's probably super cheesy about like the only way to find yourself is by serving others. And I think that's probably true, and probably a way to make the world a better place is just to like serve others and to like not, I mean, I feel like I almost wore this one shirt today, that this other tie-dye shirt that says your ego is not your amigo. It's by Online Ceramics, and shout out Online Ceramics, they're like the best. But I do think that the world would be better if we spent more time trying to quiet our ego. And I don't mean like pride, I mean like your sense of self, because like our sense of self is kind of like an illusion. It's just, there's this part of our brain and like the prefrontal cortex, I think, that like kind of houses like this idea of a self. And I think so much of our culture is trying to boost that, and but when you like meditate or run or listen to music or pray or do psychedelics or whatever, the actual brain scans show that part of your brain with the self, the oxygen and blood flow dies down in that area and it quiets down, but then the rest of your brain that never talks to each other, the whole thing lights up.
Wow.
And so I think the more we can do that, whatever that is, and whatever activities help you get there, then that will definitely make the world a better place, because you're not thinking about yourself so much. There's I kind of like to think about it like octopods, like an octopus like has 8 arms, and each arm actually has its own mini brain. And so like that's why when you like cut off an octopus arm by food, the arm still like, you can see it like go run off and get the food, because that arm thinks like, oh, that's my job. I'm an arm. I'm an autonomous arm, and I'm going to go get the food. That's what I'm very good at. And then suddenly it looks around and there's no body. And I think that's so interesting, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I wonder if like we are like those arms, we have our brains. But for us, like our sense of self has gotten so strong that we feel individual and separate, that we're these individual arms, and that all we need to do is do the best for me, this arm. But if we can quiet our brains, then we'll realize that we're like all a part of this giant octopus. And the more I think we can do that and feel in the flow of that, like the better kind of like overall octopus we can be. You don't want to just be like this stubborn arm.
Thank you for taking the time to check out the Smith Society, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Lee Sung Jin. If you did enjoy it, please take a moment to subscribe, follow, whatever it is, whatever platform you're using to listen to this. And even better, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you think. Doing those things really help get this story and these stories out to more people. So I know it's a little bit of work, but it's extremely appreciated. You can check out Lee Sung Jin on Instagram at Be Here Later, which I think is such a clever name and is so Lee Sung Jin. And you can find us on Instagram as well at The Smith Society Pod. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You're awesome.